Hello and welcome. Here in Elijasi, we've been deep in the research, and I want to start with a question. What if I told you we already have proven ways to slash poverty by up to 40%, spark a wave of new entrepreneurship, and boost company revenues by 35%? And get this, all while people actually work less. I know, it sounds almost too good to be true, right? But this isn't some futuristic fantasy. These results are real. They're happening right now all over the globe. So let's dive into the data and see exactly how this works.
So here's the roadmap for our discussion. We'll start by really understanding the problem we're facing, an economy that feels like it's built for just a few. Then we'll get to the good stuff, a whole toolkit of solutions for a fairer future. We'll follow that up by looking at the real-world proof, where this stuff is actually working. And we'll wrap up by talking about how we can build this future together.
All right, Section 1, an economy for the few. Let's really dig into the economic imbalance we're dealing with today.
Okay, let's just take a moment and look at these numbers, because they are truly staggering. We're not talking about a small gap here. This is a chasm. You have the top 1% owning almost half of everything. And then you have the bottom 50% of humanity, that's billions of people, owning less than 1%. Just let that sink in. This incredible imbalance is really the starting point for everything we're about to discuss. It's why we absolutely have to find a new way forward.
And look, this kind of inequality doesn't just happen by accident. It's really baked into the design of our current economic systems. They're almost like an escalator, just constantly funneling wealth upwards. They're just not set up to make sure that everyone benefits from our shared resources or all the amazing technological progress we're making. The old model, where your job is your only source of security, it's breaking down. It's not getting the job done when it comes to sharing the wealth fairly.
Okay, but here's where things start to look up. Section 2, models for a fairer future. The good news is we have a whole toolkit of solutions that can actually redesign our economy from the ground up. And these aren't just theories on a whiteboard. They are practical, real-world models for creating genuine economic security for everyone. Now, a central idea behind a lot of these solutions is something called a social dividend. The easiest way to think about it? It's like a shareholder payout, but instead of a company, the owner is society, and every single citizen is a shareholder. It's a direct payment that basically says, hey, you have a stake in our collective wealth, whether that's natural resources, clean air, or anything else we all own together.
So within this big idea, we're going to look at 4 key models. You've got dividends from things like oil and minerals, and then dividends from fees on carbon pollution. Then there's universal basic income. You've probably heard of it as UBI, which is just a regular, no-strings-attached payment to create a basic safety net for everyone. And finally, a really big one, completely rethinking our relationship with work. Let's take a closer look at a couple of these dividend ideas right now.
And what's really cool here is how flexible these ideas are. On one hand, you have a resource dividends. This is where you take the money made from a shared resource, say oil, put it into a giant savings account for the whole state or country, and then pay out the earnings to every single citizen. Pretty straightforward. Then you have carbon dividends, which are kind of a 2-for-1 deal. You charge polluters for their carbon emissions, which helps fight climate change, and then you give all that money right back to the people. This protects families from any price increases and makes the whole system fair.
Now, the last tool in our kit is a bit different. It's not about more money. It's about giving people back their time. We're talking about work time reduction. Maybe you've heard of it as the 4-day work week. The core idea is simple. 100% of the pay for 80% of the hours, in exchange for 100% of the productivity. It completely flips the script on that old, outdated belief that your value is measured by how many hours you're sitting at a desk. It's all about results, efficiency, and, actually having a life.
Okay, I know what you might be thinking right now. This all sounds nice, but is it just a pipe dream? Does any of this stuff actually work in the real world? Well, I am so glad you asked. Section 3 is all about moving from theory to reality. And the answer is a huge, evidence-backed yes. Let's get into the proof.
First up, let's head to Alaska. For over 40 years now, since 1982 in fact, the state has taken a portion of its oil money and paid it out directly to residents. And the scale of this is just incredible. We're talking about $65 billion. That's billion with the B, paid out to every single person living there. This isn't some tiny pilot program. It's one of the biggest, longest-running success stories we have.
So what did all that money do? Well, the impacts have been absolutely profound. Poverty dropped by as much as 20 to 40%. It actually made Alaska the most economically equal state in the entire country. And maybe most surprising of all, It has had rock-solid support from both Democrats and Republicans for decades. And the reason why is so important. It's not seen as a welfare check. It's framed as an ownership stake, your rightful share of the state's wealth. And that's an idea that just clicks with everyone no matter their politics.
But let's tackle the big objection you always hear, right? If you just give people money, won't they stop working? Well, the world's biggest basic income study, run by Give Directly in Kenya, put that to the test. And the results? They completely demolished that myth. People didn't quit their jobs, not at all. Instead, they invested. They invested in themselves, they started small businesses, they took smart risks. It didn't make them less productive, it made them more entrepreneurial.
Okay, let's switch gears to the 4-day work week. The biggest trial ever was just conducted in the UK. So, after 6 months of trying it out, how many of those companies do you think decided to stick with it? The answer is a whopping 92%. Almost all of them, which leads to the obvious question, why on earth would they do that?
Well, the results were just a slam dunk across the board. It was a true win-win-win. For employees, burnout rates fell off a cliff, down 71%. For the company, staff departures were cut by more than half. Think of the savings on hiring and training. And for the bottom line, this is the kicker. Revenues actually went up by 35%. It's just undeniable. It's better for people, it's better for business, and it's better for profits. So, as you can see, the evidence is pretty overwhelming. This brings us to our final section, building the future together. At this point, the question really isn't if these ideas work anymore, the data is in. The question now is how do we get it done? Let's walk through a clear pathway for implementation.
You can really think about it as a 3-step process. Step 1 is all about teamwork. You've got to bring together different groups of people, coalitions, to hammer out the specific policies that make sense for a particular community. Step 2 is about testing. You launch pilot programs, not just to gather more evidence, but to build public excitement and work out all the kinks. And step 3 is the nuts and bolts, building the secure and efficient tech systems you need to actually get the money or dividends to people fairly.
And this, really, is the most important question of all. Because understanding all of this is great, but it's just the first step. Making it happen takes all of us. So what can you do?
The truth is, everyone has something to contribute here. If you're an expert in economics, law, or tech, your brain is desperately needed to help design these systems. If you're a passionate citizen, you can get involved in advocacy, join a group, write to your representatives. Or you can put your support behind the amazing organizations that are already doing the hard work on the ground, running these pilots and fighting for change.
And just to give you a few examples, there are some incredible organizations already leading the way. You have Give Directly, who are pioneers in UBI research. There's the Citizens Climate Lobby, doing amazing work building support for carbon dividends. And you have Mayors for a Guaranteed Income, which is helping launch city-level programs all across the country. These are real groups doing real work.
And this really gets to the heart of our findings at Elisi. The question isn't whether humanity can create these kinds of economies. The solutions we've talked about today are not science fiction. They're tested, they're proven, they're ready to go. We have the models, we have the technology. The only thing standing in our way is simply choosing to implement what we already know works. So, the blueprints exist. They're in our hands right now. The real question, the only question that matters, is this: are we ready to build?